I'm here with Tom Mason with the World Forum on the Future of Sports Shooting Activities. And Tom, what a morning. We got in there, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, the clock kept ticking, and what we're finding out is the PLO is creating quite a problem. They claim they want to be recognized as a state, and that just turned the whole process upside down.
It was just amazing because this issue has nothing to do per se with the arms trade treaty. There is some conjecture this has to do with the new government in Egypt, but that could be conjecture. But the issue of Palestine, whether or not there'll be an observer, or whether or not they'll be recognized as a state, is a crucial issue. The United States, of course, is very opposed to it. It has the potential of ending the conference, or at least the United States' participation in the conference right here. It's totally out of left field, but has nothing to do with small arms.
But it really is an indication of what can happen here during this whole month. I mean, we have no idea when we show up that particular day what the heck's going to happen.
Absolutely, and we're on pins and needles trying to find out what is going to happen this afternoon at 5, assuming your audience may have listened to this after 5. We do not know for sure what's going to happen tomorrow. Theoretically, and it's always theoretically at the UN, non-governmental organizations, including the NRA, will speak tomorrow afternoon. That is pure theory at this time, and I'm on the phone constantly briefing Fairfax as to whether or not it's a go or a no-go for tomorrow afternoon.
And that's an interesting point, because they weren't supposed to, the NGOs were not supposed to make their presentations until next week. And when I first heard that, is that an indication that they're saying to the NGOs, you know what, we got a month here and we want to get rid of you and we want to move on with the process the way we want to do it. We don't need your input.
There is something to that, and I think it was very arbitrary that they moved this up to Tuesday. Ordinarily, it would have been the second week of the conference, and then we were told that it would be probably when it would be. We would not have been too surprised had it been Friday of this week, but we were very, very surprised when it was the Tuesday afternoon before the 4th of July holiday. And the UN doesn't even work on the 4th of July. So logistically, it could not have been a worse time for everybody.
But when you see what happened this morning, and as you said, we're coming back later today, but the big question is, what if they don't get this resolved? How long could this potentially drag on for, this issue with the PLO?
Well, I think it'll be resolved today, but the real question is what's going to happen with the United States if indeed they decided to give the Palestinians, the PLO, a seat at the table. Now, this is unrelated to the small arms issue. This is strategic global politics, and again, it may have something to do with the brand new government in Egypt.
Okay, but just to bring people around to what the issues are, ammunition is still very much on the table. I've been talking to different people, and that's really the top item that people are mentioning here. And Oxfam, Ann McDonough with Oxfam, she said, the U.S. is very vital in this. They're a key player in all of this, and I'm quoting her. Ammunition, she says, is the fuel of conflict. But if it's excluded, it will really weaken the treaty. Now, we're saying that's coming from Oxfam, which has quite a bit of clout here. What does that mean? Well,
for years, the people on the other side, if I can, they've looked upon, and I'm going to be very facetious for a moment, they've looked upon ammunition as the magic bullet. That if they can stop ammunition, they can stop conflict. Now, in reality, that can't be done. First of all, because it's very easy to manufacture ammunition. A lot of your viewers, and a lot of the NRA members, including myself, can make ammunition in our garage. You know that. They know that.
But it was a long time before we really heard ammunition.
That's
really,
right.
Just the past couple of meetings was when we first really heard it come up. I mean, everybody was talking about civilian ownership, and then all of a sudden they threw ammunition in there.
Well, and ammunition is a crucial issue. It's just totally impractical to try to trace ammunition internationally, or try to trace ammunition anyway. But and we keep telling them that, but they keep coming back to this issue. They're in love with this issue. Ammunition's the big issue, and civilian farms is the other big issue.
And what happens with that? I mean, would that become a bargaining chip for the U.S.? How do you see that?
Well,
I mean, I know you're not the U.S.
Prediction. I don't think that civilian farms are a bargaining chip with the U.S., but what I'm afraid of is that civilian farms will be defended vigorously, as they should be. When I say civilian arms, I mean exclusion of civilian farms from the ATT. And then ammunition will become the bargaining chip, might be the thing that's given away at the end. So that's very, very dangerous. Our primary concern is civilian farms, and having civilian farms exempted from the ATT.
But you got Mexico, and you have countries like England, they say, and that's that, you know, that UN word, we want the treaty to be robust. We want everything in there. And to them, everything means civilian ownership.
Broad and robust. Broad and robust. That's the phraseology.
The other thing is Syria. Really the elephant in the room. I mean, you know, at past meetings, they said, you know, we want to make it so that firearms cannot be sold to countries with terrible human rights records. There's not much worse than Syria that you can get. And yet you've got Russia selling firearms to Syria. And what impact would this treaty really have on that?
Well, I doubt whether or not it would have any impact at all on Russia. But on the other flip side of that coin, what about, you know, the opposition in Syria? There's some discussion in the press about whether or not the United States is or should supply arms to the rebels or the freedom fighters. You know, use your phrase in this particular historical instance. And there's some people advocating this treaty that would prohibit the transfer of arms to non-state actors. And right now, the people resisting in Syria are non-state actors. One of the things about this treaty that has bothered me immensely over the whole time this treaty has been negotiated, since 2006, is the lack of real discussion about how this is going to impact situations vis-a-vis Syria, vis-a-vis Libya, vis-a-vis Taiwan, vis-a-vis Israel. There's been really no in-depth discussion of that.
Rogue governments we're talking about, dictatorships.
Yeah.
You know, and I know John Bolton, former ambassador, John Bolton from the start has said, if that's what they want to achieve, this is not the vehicle to do it by, this treaty.
That's true. Well, this treaty will, what we're afraid of is this treaty will be a treaty that asks nations to play nice, and then at the same time imposes real controls on international commerce of civilian firearms, imposes real controls upon civilians, that the legislation to implement the treaty would impose further controls on the on civilians, that there might be implied within a treaty a requirement for registration that's always lurking there. We just don't know. We see great potential for harm in this treaty if civilian firearms are not exempted from the scope of the treaty.
And there's a lot of reasons why Americans should be concerned. But one reason right off the top is it's your taxpayer dollars that are paying for what's going on here, a good portion of it, and also for the propaganda that you're going to be seeing all month long, like what we saw here today. Students dressed up in body bags, you know, saying, you know, hey, we are the human cost of the arms trade treaty, you know, trying to represent that. You know, you have people that are going to be giving out bananas out of yellow weapons cases, and they're talking about how, you know, bananas are more regulated than the firearms industry.
That's right, and one of the things we've objected to, the head of the United Nations Department for Disarmament Affairs signed a letter, a public letter, supporting the EANSA's Week Against Armed Violence. And I sent a letter to them saying this was inappropriate for the United Nations, an organization run with public money, and it's taxpayers' dollars. Don't kid yourself. The United Nations can't make money out of thin air. It's taxpayers' dollars adopting an advocacy role. And it's something that they just don't seem to understand. Now, something else about this treaty, which is a danger, I think, is that this treaty very well could establish a permanent, even more permanent, United Nations bureaucracy that's going to pursue this issue. They are already talking about, in a slightly different venue, the program of action. That's the United Nations General Gun Control Program.
It's like their blueprint.
Exactly. And we're going to meet in the end of August for 2 more weeks on that. We've got a whole month in July, 2 weeks in August. But under the program of action, they're already talking about meetings going all the way to 2018. Hopefully when Jenny Simone and Tom Mason might be retired from this business. But if we don't want to retire, we're going to have work for a long time.
Well, getting back to what we were talking earlier about the PLO, it's important to point out there are foreign ministers, what we might call Secretary of States,
yes, that's correct,
from many countries here.
Yeah.
And to see what's going on today is really proof of all the backdoor politics that goes on. They're not even talking about the issues we're talking about on this.
Well, it's interesting to see the foreign ministers cooling their heels. And I'm sure there's a lot of very, very unhappy bureaucrats around here and ministers. And foreign ministers are not known for their lack of ego, so I think there could be some bruised ego. We get paid not to be humble. You see, when we're the NGOs, we don't get egos. But
we've got to ask you, because I heard a lot of people, I was talking to folks saying, you know, they're not even convinced at this point, and how could you be after what you're seeing going on today, that we will have a treaty. Do you think after 15 years of pushing this, that is what the UN is going to accept?
Well, I think the UN will accept anything because they're desperate for a treaty. In 2001, when the program
So in other words, accept anything as far as what scope, what we're
they'll,
talking about is in there.
they'll try for all they can get, and they'll accept anything. But then I could be wrong. I could be wrong. I thought we were going to come in here today and listen to innumerable speeches.
Yeah.
Instead, we sat there and twiddled our thumbs for 2.5 hours.
But a lot at stake here. No
stake,
doubt about it. When you're talking about civilian ownership, still very much a target. Ammunition now, very much a target.
And we're going to be here, though, and you're going to be here on and off. I don't know. I'm not going to see you the whole month, every night,
I hope
every
not
day
every
for the
night,
whole.
but I'll be reporting on it. You can bet.
Good.
All righty. Thanks so much, Tom.
Okay.